My name is Dr. Irving Benoit Volter.
I'm Stefan Kaps.
My name is Sofia Vieira Lopes.
My name is Isis Menti-Fulbright.
My name is Carla Figueiredo.
My name is José Luis Banea.
Hi, I am Wilfred van Dellen.
My name is Isabel Campil.
The Eurovisions team
Invite you to the 4th edition of the Eurovisions International Conference.
I look forward to share my work with you at Eurovisions.
Share the moment with us during the upcoming edition of Eurovisions.
Of the Eurovisions Conference.
For those who don't know us yet, we are a group of researchers from different parts of the world who are interested in the ESC phenomenon from a scholarly perspective.
Eurovision started in 2018 by myself, Sofia Vieira Lopes, and Irving Volter, Dr. Eurovision. Later, we were joined by Carla Figueira and Isabel Campelo.
Hello, everybody.
This year, we are delighted to have Wilfred van Dellen as partner and chair of the second Science Slam session. He's a teacher at the University College of Maastricht.
Good to see you, and let's rock and roll. Because it's back in Eurovision.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're very happy to have Wilfred with us because he was also the conductor of a think tank project which helped us to develop Eurovisions in the way you can see it today, hopefully, in a more interactive way. So you can be part of our conference by asking questions, by interacting with us. There will be, how was it called, this Google thing?
Jamboard.
A Jamboard. And you will find the link in the description of this stream, so you can just click on it and leave your comments and your remarks there. And of course, you can discuss with us in our live chat. It looks like that. Hello, Kojun. He will be our musical act, our interlude later, and you can leave all your comments, everything we want to say and share with us in the conference.
So before we start, we would like to thank to our 3 volunteers, Mariana Rosa, Adriana Lopes and Carolina Alves, for the amazing job they did in the preparation of this year's conference, as well as to Gonçalo Oliveira for the amazing website development and Gonçalo Conceição for design work.
The idea of the Eurovisions Conference is, in fact, to have a parallel event to the Eurovision Song Contest itself. And for the first time, we did it in Lisbon, 2018, during the Great Eurovision Week in the Eurofan Cafe. Thank you for hosting us. It was a wonderful event. And the next year, we did it in Tel Aviv at the neighboring university, which was very close to the actual event. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic situation last year, we had to choose and to opt for an online format. And this year, as you all know, we had to do the same, and we are happy to be here in your living rooms, on your sofas, and wherever you are watching Eurovisions.
Exactly. As is always our purpose, we have very different types of speakers in this year's edition: early careers researchers, established researchers, media professionals, artists, and music industry professionals. If you have any question, as Irving said, you would like to ask our speakers, you can use our social networks through Facebook and YouTube and share ideas on the Jamboard. You see the link on our broadcasting description. At the end, we will have a Eurovision quiz. Don't forget to join us. And test your knowledge about Eurovision.
And there is a wonderful prize to win, this great book, one of the first scholarly books about the Eurovision Song Contest, the result of the first Eurovision Song Contest Conference 2008 in Volos in Greece. So this is worthwhile reading for all those who want to look on the backstage of Eurovision. So, we will start with our keynote, and we are very happy to welcome our keynote speaker, Michael Ski. He's a senior lecturer in communication and media studies at the School of Social Sciences in the Loughborough University in UK. He has a PhD from the Department of Media and Communications at the London School of Economics, and his work was awarded the 2012 British Sociological Association Philip Abrams Memorial Prize. He participated in an international collaboration investigating the staging, the management, and the representation of media events, which used the 2014 Eurovision Song Contest as a case study, and we're very curious to find out what he found out. So, welcome, Michael, to our conference. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I'd also like to thank Carla and Irving for their superb support. So if anything technical goes wrong, it's not their fault. It's almost certainly going to be mine. I've got some slides now to share with you, so I'm going to try and do that successfully. And then, okay, so I hope everyone can see those slides. So, the plan today is, hang on a minute, they don't seem to be moving. Why can't I? So here we go. First problem is I can't move the slides.
Oh.
Ah, there we go. I told you the technical problem was going to be down to me and no one else. Okay, so this is the outline for my talk today, and I'm just going to turn my stopwatch on so that I don't go on for too long. So what I want to do today is I want to start with a confession. I've got to confess that I think, unlike most people who are attending this conference, who probably get very excited every May and make plans to get together with their friends and possibly dress up and bake special food items for Eurovision, because they are huge fans of the show, I'm not really a massive fan of the Eurovision Song Contest. I hope you're not going to hold that against me, okay? But what I am very interested in is media events. And I do think that the Eurovision Song Contest is a really interesting example of a media event in terms of the fact that it involves so many different countries. I think it's interesting because obviously the large numbers of people who watch it, the fact that it doesn't really have any major celebrities. So unlike other forms of media events, they tend to have big celebrities to draw crowds. And of course, Eurovision doesn't tend to do that. So I think Eurovision is really interesting in a whole variety of ways. But if you were going to get me to take part in the quiz later, I would do very badly indeed, because I don't know who won the Eurovision Song Contest in 2003, and I wouldn't be able to tell you where it was hosted in 1992, for example. So, as I say, I hope you can forgive me that. As Irving said, I went with 3 colleagues to the Copenhagen Eurovision Song Contest in 2014, and you can see a picture there. I think that was the end of the week that we'd spent in Copenhagen, and you have 4 very tired academics posing for that photo. So we went to all of the events, the semi-finals, the dress rehearsal, we went to the final, and we spent a lot of time talking to different people who were involved in producing the media event, in organizing it, in covering it for different media institutions. We talked to fans, and one of the things that Julie, my colleague, was able to do was actually talk to the Danish public service broadcasters who produced that particular event. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples from those interviews, because I think they're really interesting in terms of seeing kind of behind the production of the event. So the idea behind this is I'm going to focus first on media events. So I'm going to provide a short definition, and then I'm going to move on to questions of, I'm really interested in the production side of things and the involvement of different organizations in relation to the Eurovision Song Contest and the tensions that are involved between people who produce the event, people who engage with the event, people who perform at the event. And I'm going to highlight two of those tensions. I'm quite interested here in what we've called fans, anti-fans, and non-fans, and this draws on the work of Jonathan Gray. And we're going to look at the tensions that may be involved in those different groups who watch Eurovision. And then finally, in the last part of the talk today, I'm going to talk about the tensions that sometimes exist between organizers and hosts, and the particular challenge that the organizers, the European Broadcasting Union, have in managing this event. On the one hand, trying to keep it fresh and innovative, and on the other hand, trying to make sure that the hosts of each event don't go overboard each year, because the organizers are also thinking, well, we need to host, we need to organize next year's one, and we need to make it manageable as well. So those are the sorts of things that I want to talk about in this presentation today. And the first thing I want to do is just, as I said, my interest in Eurovision is as a media event. And I think it's just worthwhile briefly defining what I mean by this. And of course, it refers back to the classic study by Diane and Katz in the late 80s. They were doing their research and they published their book in 1991. And they were interested in what were then primarily television events. And their argument was that these events were important because they were live, they interrupted normal broadcasting, they generated huge audiences. And one of the most controversial things that they argued was that these events integrated people into a wider society. So whether you think about a royal wedding, or whether you think about a sporting event, or indeed the Eurovision Song Contest, their argument was that people watching this event felt part of a bigger community. Often they were talking about the national community, but of course, in the case of Eurovision, there's been arguments that people feel part of a wider European community as a result of watching Eurovision. And this final argument around the integrative function of media events has been subject to a lot of criticism. A lot of people have argued, well, actually, different parts of the audience watching a media event may interpret in very different ways. And so far from bringing people together, what you often find is these events generate conflicts between different parts of society. And in order to try and take into account some of these criticisms, what I did was try and produce a new, slightly amended definition for media events that, of course, focus on their size, their scale, their liveness, their organization, but also argued that they don't necessarily integrate people. That what we often saw in relation to media events was conflict rather than harmony or cohesion. And moving on to Eurovision, what I've been interested to do in relation to the work that we carried out at the 2014 contest and then subsequently is to think about the different, I guess the term might be stakeholders who are involved in Eurovision. So some of those stakeholders will be actually organizing and producing the event. Some of them will be responsible for performing at the event. Some will participate in other ways. So you'll have fans who travel to different countries each year and want to take part in it physically. And then, of course, you've got people like journalists who write about the event and you have media audiences as well. And what I want to focus on for this presentation is, as I say, some of the tensions that exist between those different groups. And the title of this slide, Who Cares About Eurovision, has a double meaning, because some people care greatly about Eurovision. I mean, the European Broadcasting Union cares about it because it's kind of the showcase event for public service broadcasters in Europe. And of course, the hosts of the event care a lot about Eurovision because they want to present their city or their country in the best way possible. But there are also people who would argue that Eurovision is a waste of time or a waste of money or a bit of a joke. Now, some of those people might make those claims, but at the same time, they'll sit down and watch Eurovision every year and they'll kind of be very critical about it. So this idea of caring about Eurovision, I think, is quite interesting because it highlights the different relationship that particular stakeholders have with this very high profile media event. And it also points to the way in which different stakeholders, the objectives that particular stakeholders might want to have from the event as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in relation to that tension between organizers and producers. But the first thing I want to do is just flag up this idea of people who engage with the event, either by going to it and supporting it and buying tickets and participating, or through increasingly the media. And what we did in when we were in Copenhagen in 2014 was we spoke to a lot of fans on the ground. And what we found was that the fans on the ground were absolutely passionate about this event. They were very, very knowledgeable. They could certainly tell you who won in 2003. And it was quite interesting that, you know, forms of identity and community came through in the interviews that we did with those fans. And we came up with this idea of playful nationalism. And so the photo of the gentleman dressed in the very interesting suit there, this was a commonplace. People wanted to display their national identity, but they were doing it in a very playful manner. And they could appreciate the songs of other countries. They weren't necessarily going to support the country they came from. And it was a very kind of open and cosmopolitan form of engagement. And what was also quite interesting about those fans is that they didn't want any form of politics involved in the Eurovision Song Contest. They wanted to focus on the performances, and they wanted to focus on the individuals who were on stage and taking part in the event. Now, this contrasts greatly with what we've called anti-fans of Eurovision. Now, anti-fans aren't passionate about the event. They'll turn it on that May evening and they'll watch a bit of it, and they'll kind of watch it because they think it's a bit of a joke. And what they want from the event is something very different. They want controversy. They want scandal. They want something to go wrong. They're interested in the political tensions that might be involved between different countries who are participating in the event. And it was quite interesting when we were at the 2014 Eurovision Song Contest, there was a notable scandal involving the Russian entrant. And fans on the ground were really angry that the Russian entry was booed, whereas fans who were watching on television thought this was really interesting because it was generating a controversy. So these two groups have very different ways of engaging with the Eurovision Song Contest. And we can also see this in relation to the tensions that might be involved sometimes between the organizers and the host. Now, it's fairly obvious that both of them will want a large, successful, spectacular event that draws in large numbers of audiences, and they want high levels of engagement through social media, for example. But they also have slightly differing objectives. And it's quite interesting to see how the EBU looks to manage the ongoing production and presentation of the Eurovision Song Contest, because they want to have a successful show, but they also want to manage what the hosts want to do, because the hosts are very keen on having the biggest and the brightest and the most expensive Eurovision Song Contest, so they can brand their city or they can brand their nation. So they want the Eurovision Song Contest in their city to be the biggest and the brightest ever, whereas the EBU says, hang on a minute, if you spend all this money, then what's going to happen next year when they will also want to be the biggest and the brightest? And this is highlighted by this quote that comes from one of the interviews that we did with the producers of the Copenhagen event in 2014. And I think it just highlights this idea that there is a tension here between the EBU as organizer and the host, which in this case was Copenhagen. And again, there's this, I mean, the highlighted in red, the broadcaster wants to make it the biggest and the brightest. They want to make it a real spectacle. And of course, the EBU says, well, okay, that's fine. We want to have a successful show, but we can't go too crazy. We can't go too mad. We need to think that there's going to be an event next year, and there's going to be one the year after that, and we need to protect the format. And the final thing I just want to talk about today in the last couple of minutes, is the idea that the Eurovision Song Contest can be seen as a format that needs to be protected by the European Broadcasting Union. And what they want to do is they want to balance novelty and innovation. And I've highlighted a couple of recent innovations. I'm sure you can come up with more to try and keep the format fresh and exciting. But at the same time, they need to ensure that there is continuity with the past as well. And so what they're trying to do is provide a balance between novelty and continuity. And I thought it was quite interesting this year. I did actually watch the show this year in preparation for this talk. And I think it's also important that for the contest, they occasionally have a rather unpredictable and left field winner, which again can generate some degree of engagement by people who aren't necessarily huge fans of the Eurovision Song Contest. So even if people don't like the winner from Italy this year, it's unusual and it keeps people interested. So you can't have the same style of music winning every year because people are going to turn off. And in relation to sporting mega events, one of the things that makes sporting mega events so popular is they have this idea of managed unpredictability. So you kind of know what's going to happen at Eurovision. There's going to be the voting system and there's going to be the performances. But there is also a degree of unpredictability which generates tension and emotional engagement. And that's also what keeps people watching. People who aren't necessarily huge fans of the event will carry on watching because there is this degree of unpredictability. And I'm going to wrap it up there because I can see that I'm out of time. I don't really have any conclusions for now, but I'd just like to pose a few possible avenues for future research when it comes to the Eurovision Song Contest. So I think there hasn't been much work done on the production side of media events. I think Eurovision's attempts to go global, to engage with other parts of the world. So there was a particular emphasis on trying to break America a couple of years ago, which I thought was quite interesting. The fact that the European Broadcasting Union is a representative of public service broadcasters, I think is quite interesting because obviously some of them are under pressure at the moment. And the key thing that I talked about today was, how do you keep that format fresh? And can you keep that format fresh without having major league celebrities involved? So those are a few of the issues that, you know, we might want to think about in relation to Eurovision as it progresses over the next few years. But thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to hearing your questions and thoughts.
Thank you, Michael, so much for this. Wait a second. I just have to... Yeah, here I am. So, thank you for this very comprehensive insight into this complexity of Eurovision. So Fabio is just made a comment. I will just show it. He would want to say that a big part of the fan community nowadays is pretty much interested in the ever-present political nuances of the event, albeit in a constructive manner. So, do you think that these conflicts are also essential to Eurovision? I think it's also a competitive format, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I think they are. And I think if you want to bring in people who aren't massive fans of the competition, I think those conflicts are really important, those controversies. So, for example, last week I watched the Eurovision Song Contest with my family, and they're not fans of the event. They want to watch it because it's, you know, a bit of fun and a bit of a laugh. And they were constantly commenting on the fact that Britain didn't get any points. Oh, they hate us. Those Europeans hate us. And that was a political element, but they quite enjoyed that because, you know, it was a bit of fun and a bit of humor. But, you know, what I'm trying to say is millions of people watch this event. They're not huge fans of the Eurovision Song Contest. They'll sit down once a year. They probably won't follow it outside of that one night of the year. And the conflict elements, I think, keeps it fresh for those people.
Yeah, exactly. It is, for me, it was very, you make a point with this managed unpredictability, sorry. And it is in the conversations that I have with fans, non-fans and anti-fans, I know, this idea of something that could be very different, but people know that in May we have Eurovision Song Contest and we have the postcards with touristic images. People want to watch it and to be there and see, at least for criticize sometimes, but it is very interesting.
I also think this year was quite interesting for me personally, was the links that were made to the past. So those rooftop performances with previous winners, I thought were really interesting because, okay, yes, we need innovation and we need the YouTubers to get the young people involved, but there's also this link to the past that I think they're starting to utilize a bit more. And, you know, when it comes to the Italian winner this year, there was a little bit of controversy about that. Oh, you know, it's an unusual music style. But there was controversy when Lordi won it all those years ago. And now Lordi is celebrated as this key marker of Eurovision. So it's quite interesting how, you know, Lordi now becomes part of the celebrated history of Eurovision. So it's links with the past, but also thinking about the future as well.
Just another comment from Fabio. He says, we don't hate the UK, but the attitude of the BBC towards the contest since Terry Wogan, and thus the UK audience's perception. It's an entire side discussion in itself. Do you think that there are cultural differences in being fans or non-fans or anti-fans?
I mean, there are many people we spoke to at Eurovision came from the UK in Copenhagen, and they were massive fans of the event, huge fans of the event. But I think there are cultural differences in the way that countries watch it. So I know that in Scandinavia, they take it very seriously. And the Swedish they have a little mini event where they choose their entrant, don't they? And I can't remember what it's called. It begins with an M. I'm sure
Melody
someone.
Festival.
That's the one. But they take it very seriously, and it's, you know, whereas in the UK it's seen as a bit of a joke. And I don't know if that's the same in, you know, Germany or France, but I think there are cultural differences in the way that it's engaged with, and that is of course interesting as well.
Yeah, yeah. Wilfred, make a question. Would involving Australia and setting up a USA version be examples of global appeal versus European relevance?
Yes, I think it is. I think the EBU is starting to think about how it can involve other audiences. So I think recently it was involved in some sort of deal with an American broadcaster about distributing the format of Eurovision to America. I'm kind of interested to think about how Eurovision as it currently is, which is very ironic and very playful, how does that translate to America, which strikes me as kind of big and brash and, you know, we're about winners, whereas I'm not sure Eurovision is about that. So I think the cultural thing is quite interesting in relation to how Eurovision would travel to different parts of the world, given that the organizers themselves often present Eurovision in a quite playful and ironic way. So Nikki, the YouTuber, when she was doing her tutorials during the last competition, you know, she was very kind of ironic and sarcastic. And I think that's part of the, you know, part of the difference of Eurovision, but a part of why people engage with it. And I do wonder whether that translates to America, for example, or whether that translates to other parts of the world. Mm-hmm. But I do think that they're very definitely looking at how they can break other markets.
Mm-hmm. Well, I see lots of questions coming up regarding Melody Festival and Sanremo, and to sum them up at some point, don't you think that this has also to do with your musical socialization? I mean, that UK people are not socialized with European pop music and are more or less highbrow about that. So this is also, don't you think this is also influencing their perception of the contest?
Yes, I think it is. Yes, I think, yes, with what you've been brought up is quite important. And I think the UK has an idea that, you know, it's made this contribution to popular music, and therefore Eurovision is a bit beneath it. That's the perception that some people have. Not everyone. There are many fans of Eurovision in the UK who enjoy it and get a lot from it. But I think one of the general attitudes is that, you know, Eurovision isn't taken seriously in the UK because we have this rich history of, you know, popular music, and therefore there's, you know, this kind of superiority complex that the UK has in that respect, is what I'd say. Now, I'm not sure whether other people would agree with me though.
Carla also questioned a very interesting point, because you told about anti-fans and non-fans, and Carla is asking about anti-celebrities like Salvador Sobral, who wins in 2017, because he sort of rejects the Ask Celebrity and all the behaviors, normal behaviors of being a celebrity inside and outside the bubble of the Eurovision. What do you think about it?
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I mean, one of the things that makes Eurovision so interesting is it is this huge event where you don't know who the participants are. Unless you're a really keen fan, you really don't know who these people are. And I guess that's part of the idea behind it is, you know, they're meant to be relatively unknown individuals. Now, some of them may be known in a particular country, but you know, as a rule, they're not major league celebrities. And I think the example you give is another one of how you generate ongoing interest. So you want slightly different winners every now and then to kind of make things feel fresh. What was also, I think, I don't know the year, but Justin Timberlake featured in one of the Eurovision Song Contest performances a couple of years ago.
2016, yeah.
Yeah, and it was interesting because we spoke to the producers about this of 2014 because they wanted to have a major global star. And the EBU said, no, you're not allowed to, because what makes Eurovision special is it doesn't have these enormous Western stars. And so I thought it was quite interesting that they actually agreed to let Justin Timberlake appear. But again, I think this was a very calculated strategy to try and appeal to the American market. Because if you're average American, you try to sell Eurovision to them, what are you going to say? It's a contest between people that you've never heard of. And so having Timberlake appear was this kind of, okay, now we can try and sell it to the Americans. So the lack of celebrity, or if you want to call it anti-celebrity in Eurovision, is I think one of the things that makes it so interesting. Because if you think of any other major global media event, they all feature celebrities. Whether it's a royal wedding, whether it's a sporting event, whether it's the Oscars, they're all built around these major global celebrities, whereas Eurovision isn't.
Mm-hmm.
I see. So Aida is asking, does the UK have a political reason to participate in the UC as Ukraine does in terms of national identity?
Does it have a political reason for?
Yeah, for taking part in the Eurovision Song Contest. Because
well, I think one of the reasons that the BBC continues to invest in it is because it generates large viewing figures on a Saturday night in May. So, one of the objectives of the EBU is to produce on a Saturday night in May kind of 4 hours of entertainment that generates large media audiences. And, I know that they're falling over time, but all media audiences are falling over time because the media environment is becoming so much more fragmented. But for the BBC, it makes sense to have Eurovision on because it does generate interest and people watch it.
Yeah.
Is the simple answer.
Yeah.
Sophia.
Isabel also asks, the Italian win, although controversial, was celebrated because it is unusual and keeps people interested. Are we evaluating the songs for the wrong reasons?
I can't comment on the quality of the song. I mean, I remain agnostic about, whether it's good or, the genre, heavy rock doesn't win that often at Eurovision. Mm-hmm. And those types of individuals as they were presented don't win that often. As for the quality of the song, I don't care. I genuinely don't care. But what I'm interested in is the fact that it is a different type of winner. And, as I was sitting with my family, they were all moaning about it. But next year, they'll probably turn on the TV again to see what happens. And that's important. That's what matters, is that you keep people's interest. Because I think if you just have the same sort of song every year, it just becomes predictable. It just becomes a bit dull. So you do need variety. You do need your anti-celebrity, but also you need your, someone who embraces celebrity one year. But you need to keep things fresh.
Okay, so thank you for our scholar celebrity, Michael Skate, to being with us.
You're too kind.
And we are striving for some variety in our programs, so we will now have a musical interlude with our famous, or maybe not so famous, but in future famous, South Korean pianist Ko Jun, who is a very talented musician and a big Eurovision fan, and he prepared for us a recap of the first semi-final of this year's Eurovision Song Contest on the piano. So lean back, enjoy the music, drink a cup of tea, and meet us again in 5 minutes for the Science Slam.
very much for joining us again. So this year, once again, we decided to include in our conference a science slam with early career researchers working on the Eurovision Song Contest and giving them the opportunity to show their ongoing work and encouraging dialogue with more experienced researchers in the area. Through the conference, they will also be able to showcase their work to a much broader audience. Now, to encourage engagement and participation, we have a voting page for these early career researchers, which will be open until 4:05 today. So if you are interested, please vote for your favorite topic, researcher. This year, we have two very special chairs on this session as well, which will be Wilfred van Dellen, a teacher at the University of Maastricht, where he is currently responsible for the theorizing and modeling course. In this course, in his own words, Wilhelm encourages students to write about seemingly non-academic subjects, such as, for instance, the Eurovision Song Contest. Hopefully not. We also have Dean Vuletic, who's already with us. So Dean is the world's leading academic authority on the history of the Eurovision Song Contest. He is also the author of the first ever scholarly book, Post-War Europe and the Eurovision Song Contest. So we are delighted to have you both with us. Thank you very much once again. We would also like to call the attention for our Jamboard. Please feel free to write on it, sharing your ideas, your comments, and the link to the Jamboard is in the channel description as well. So with this small introduction, I invite Isabella to present herself and Jose, and then we will have our chair, Dean Vuletic, to sort of moderate this Science Slam session for us. Thank you very much. So Isabella.
Yes, thank you. And I know there's been a bit of a misconception about the length of our presentations, but I'll try to make it as brief as possible. And otherwise, Dean, feel free to interrupt me. But my name is Isabella, and I am a 19-year-old student from Aalborg in Denmark. And I am making my baby steps into the world of Eurovision research with this project that I've been working on and that I will be presenting for you now. I've worked on a project looking into how politics and history is reflected in post-Cold War Eurovision, especially with a focus on the relationship between the former East and West Bloc. In this presentation, I will use two different performances from Eurovision, as well as an interview as a basis for my analysis. And I will now present my work. Eurovision in 1990 was held in Yugoslavia, the only communist state to have participated in the contest before the fall of the Berlin Wall. In 1990, the wall had fallen just months before, and Germany had begun their process of reuniting. Thus, the context surrounding the contest was extremely political, with participating songs bearing titles like Keine Mauern mehr, meaning no more wall, from Austria, and Frei zu leben, meaning to live freely, from Germany, a song about unification. The winner of that year is also no exception. The symbolism into Italy's Toto Cutugno's performance of Insieme in 1992 stands out clear. Toto is dressed in white from top to toe, the color one typically associates with peace, and on the screen behind him, a blue background with white stars reminiscent of the EU flag. By singing the line, Unite, Unite Europe in the chorus, the audience didn't even have to read between the lines. The song title, meaning Together 1992, referenced the Maastricht Treaty, which would conclude in 1992. To allow the Maastricht Treaty to go through, 3 countries had to ratify the treaty by referendum. Thus, the title could be seen as an attempt to nudge the citizens of these countries into voting in favor of the treaty. In the rest of the world, political theories about Western democracy dominated the landscape. Most notably, the American Francis Fukuyama's The End of History, which came out a few months before the fall of the Berlin Wall, and explained that when communism and the Soviet Union would fall, the world would become a better place due to the westernized democracy being humanity's final form of ideological development. Likewise, this is a theme that we see in the songs of the 1990 Eurovisions, revolving around the unification of Europe with basis in a democratic ideology of making the world a better place. The politics of the 1990s Eurovision Song Contest was strongly Westernized and became a symbol of the Western values that other countries sought to explore themselves. Throughout the 90s, however, as more Eastern European countries came to join Eurovision, bringing with them their own culture, politics, and wars, it led to Western Europe having to redefine their idea of what a united Europe meant. For example, when Bosnia and Herzegovina debuted in 1993 during the Yugoslav War, the participation at the contest meant that they had to flee the besieged city of Sarajevo. Eurovision gave them an opportunity to send a message to the European audience about the civil war and tell a story that contrasted this Western idea of unity. Further, the Bosnian delegation risking their lives to go to Eurovision also shows the importance of Eurovision as an international stage. Using Eurovision as a platform allows a country to reach out to a broader audience, one that they would otherwise not have reached. Looking at recent years of Eurovision, we see a shift in the way political commentary is presented. When Jamala won in 2016, she was accused of being too political due to his song's theme being linked to the annexation of Crimea in 2014. But this song did not comment directly on the annexation. Instead, it evolved around Jamala's cultural heritage as a Crimean Tatar and the mass deportation of her ancestors during the Second World War by Stalin. Historical events can be used to comment on a current political climate because it makes it difficult to determine what is political and what is not. The language barrier furthers this because a country can use metaphors and language to convey a certain message to part of the audience or the country's population itself, while still going unnoticed to others or, well, surpassing the rules. Countries can focus on either a national or global audience for their political messaging. By using the global audience, countries will try to put focus on injustice happening or other conflicts, like with my example about Bosnia. But the national audience is for the country to create their own national identity through the contest. With 1944, Jamala used her Crimean culture to tell a story to both national and global audiences. Her Tatar culture was very clearly reflected, primarily in her song, where she sings in the Crimean Tatar language, as well as making use of a duduk, but also slightly through her performance, where she stands before a screen showcasing a large tree, which could be a symbol of a family tree or a tree of life. You can say that culture is reflected in all performances, but also the Western performances. But the way we see existential history used by Eastern European countries is very different, because the West's poor knowledge of Eastern European culture and history is used to craft a certain idea of a political and cultural identity. Ukraine is especially a notable example of a country that uses Eurovision as a way to craft a national identity. The broad reach of Eurovision has meant that the contest has been important for our understanding of what European culture is today. It has helped us define what Europe is and exposed us to cultures and music from other countries long before they joined the EU. This way, our perception of Europe has been broadened to what we see today. Eurovision can be seen as a confirmation of Europeanness. It represents an idealization of the free and democratic Western world. This meant that some countries utilized the contest as a tool to brand not only themselves, but also mark their re-entry into Europe and the potential membership of the EU. One of the most prominent examples of this is Estonia's win in 2001 as the first former Soviet state, where they were very clear about their membership talks with the EU that was ongoing at the same time. Because of its rules, Eurovision also provides equality that the EU could not. On stage, everyone had the same amount of time to send their message or promote themselves, 3 minutes. For some Western countries, the new former Soviet countries taking part in Eurovision was looked down upon, mainly due to their very different show culture. The Big Five rule was put in place to ensure the largest Western European countries' participation. It seems to reflect the tensions surrounding Europe's Eastern inclusion. Yet, the Big Five ironically provides a disadvantage to most of its members, who placed low in the contest ever since, with France and Italy from this year's Eurovision probably being the most notable exceptions. Eurovision's political and cultural meaning varies differently from country to country, but in one way or another, it has played a role in how we define our European identity, both individually and globally. This can be seen in the way that European tendencies and ideologies are reflected in the competition. Most Europeans have a relationship with the Eurovision Song Contest, or at least they have an opinion about it. And it has the power to bring us together because we all listen to the same songs and see the same performances. This is exactly why Eurovision is so important as a platform. No other place can pull an audience like this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabella, for that great historical summary in such a few minutes. I think one of the difficulties with Eurovision history is that, you know, it spans actually such a long period of time and so many issues, and to condense it into such a short and striking presentation is really an art form. So I'm very glad that you achieved this. One question I want to ask you, though, is, you know, when you think about the politics and you talk about these countries doing this, you know, like let's say Bosnia and Herzegovina sent this song about the war, who is actually behind this song? Because, you know, it's not a whole country that's behind the song, right?
Yeah, and I actually, I did not include it in my presentation, but I actually talked about this in my work because there are several, you can have several senders of one message. Of course, you have the national broadcaster. You know, in some countries, the national broadcaster are the ones picking their song. So of course, the broadcaster wants us to send a song that convey perhaps a certain message. And in some countries, and especially some of the Eastern European countries, the broadcaster are more or less controlled by the state. So in that way, you also have the state as a messenger for some of these political and cultural messages we see at Eurovision. So those are like I think the very important factors to look into when you see these songs, that there's actually, like, for some state behind it, a nation that wants to. We saw it this year with Belarus trying to send a performance that was very much something that was, the government was trying to craft a certain perception of what they were like. It was very pro-Lukashenko. And of course, it was also disqualified. But there we saw it very clearly.
Yes. No, I think this is just one important thing to remember. Even though the entries appear under the names of states in the contest, you know, there are lots of people, lots of different actors behind these entries. The artists, the producers, songwriters, composers, television officials. So we have to unpackage all of this, you know.
Yeah.
Which,
okay, so
as you just pointed out,
I just have to have the Science Slam fair. I now have to give the microphone to Jose.
Already.
So thank you so much, Isabella.
Thank you so much.
And we will come back to you in the questions and answers session with all the questions that rise, that the public is raising during your presentations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isabella.
Thank you, Dean.
So, Jose, it's your turn.
Yeah, hello. I am about to share my screen, but it's yours right now.
We don't see anything yet.
Yeah, because
I see. Okay, wait a second.
Is it okay?
Everything's fine.
Okay. Good afternoon. It is an honor to be part of the Eurovisions Conference family. I come back to the 1992 ESC to analyze its symbolic dimensions in a crucial moment of the Maastricht Treaty process. As the researcher Aida Kamenkova stated back in the Eurovisions Conference in 2018, the is less a competition of songs than a platform to tell stories. Since its beginnings, we heard about plenty of topics, mainly on inclusion, feminine empowerment, pacifism, and also about the idea of Europe. In this regard, the song's lyrics are a direct way to connect with the big audience, proposing so often a critique of society, as Tim Buletic says, about the Norwegian 1974 entry, The First Day of Love, a song not properly about love. But it is especially during the 90s when we can find better this politicization. Well, we come back to Cotugno's song. So even Toto Cotugno's song Insieme 1992 was a call to union and celebration through diversity. In this context, very underrated proposals from 2 years later continue these trends. I'm talking about the Norwegian song interpreted by Merete Troen, Visione. Musically, this song, it has everything to do it well. A dark and mystic intro music when she descending from a stair, long and rising tone verses, making the arrival of the refrain more desirable, and a choir covering her in every moment. However, this entry plays just 18 of 23. Why? Well, most of the fans probably remember that she had problems on finding the cameraman, so she constantly conducted her eyes to wrong places. Nonetheless, she sang very well and her improvising interpretation became so fresh against the artificial and so over-rehearsed performance from the event. She even giggled in the middle of a verse in what today become almost a meme on YouTube. But the lyrics in Norwegian of this song were totally the opposite of her funny performance. Its serious verses showcased a not very brilliant side of European Western civilization, pointing out to some pernicious effects of modernity as Frankfurt School forecasted. Well, let's translate some fragments of this song. We only reap what we sow. What have we understood then of the time that has passed? Can the past carry the children of the future? Well, the following part of the song also disturbed those euphoric atmosphere of 1992. A century is ebbing out. A new era is knocking on our door. Has progress led us astray? Well, a critique of the European politics can be read here. So this is important to understand because even though this country is part of the economic European area, Norway voted no twice to its adhesion to European Union. And other verses says, nature is wounded, values are at stake. Now we see all of yesterday's mistakes. Our country is a heritage of the people of our country. So here we can draw attention to the problem of instrumental rationality that philosopher Martin Heidegger claimed. Well, Cotugno's serious interpretation showcased the importance of the topic as it has been said before. Visione finally failed to do a so happy interpretation in high contrast with the depth of its lyrics. But thanks to also to possibilities of today's online archive, the past can be rewritten in the light of the dystopian moments that we are facing. Despite the technical problems, Zombie broke the boundaries between singer and spectator, and also the mechanic of the contest for a while. In the time of postmodern debates were central, she was postmodern too in the acting, pointing out the space in between, blurring the distance of subject and object, and making visible the cameraman and the spectator to, by the way. How an error acts as a chance to introduce the difference is how postmodernism operated, paying attention to the gaps, the shifts, as Peter Berry said, and the fail as a creative opportunity, introducing the unexpected. Thank you very much for the invitation. And thank you, Merece, for accepting my interview. I hope you are online with us. And I hope also that my contribution can inspire new reads of the contest regarding its aesthetics. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that, Jose. We just have a few minutes before we wrap up for the next interlude. And then we'll go into more of a discussion just after 4. But I just wanted to say what I found really interesting about your paper is the way you juxtapose 2 songs from the South and the North. You know, one from a Southern European country that's already part of the European community, going on to be the European Union at that time, and another one from a Eurosceptic Northern European country, which has never joined the European Union. But we know that since then, Italy and Norway have had very different economic histories. You know, one is a story of economic regression, the other is a story of economic growth. So I'm very glad that you contextualized both of these songs in the historical moment, in the European moment as well, and that you also did a close analysis of the Norwegian song. And what I think you also highlight is that we can't exaggerate the relationship between the Eurovision Song Contest and European integration. You know, we have to be very careful when we analyze song context in the context of a historical moment. To, again, going back to my comment for Isabella, you know, consider who the agents are, what their intentions are, and, you know, what they might want the song to be interpreted as, rather than what we might see it as being, as meaning simply because it correlates to a certain historical time, a certain historical context. So, I'll stop there and hand it over to Irving, and he can give us an introduction to the next section.
No, actually it's me, but anyway, thank you. So it is my very pleasant job to introduce Ko-Jun again with another musical interlude. This time, I think he will be playing songs from the second, a recap of the second semifinal. So let's all listen to Ko-Jun again. beautiful. I particularly liked this performance of Gojun because he was recapping some of my favorite songs, this year's favorite songs, the Swiss song, and of course, the Portuguese song, Love is on my side. Okay, so moving on to Science Slam number 2, we are very delighted to have Isis from the United Kingdom and also Stefan from Germany. And with our fantastic chair, Wilfred van Dellen. So I'll leave you to it, okay?
Hello, so,
yes, let's get started. I think first, Irvin, you're sharing computer sound at the moment. Let's make sure that Isis can share her slides, right? Can you share, Isis?
I can't share my slides while another participant is sharing.
That's something that Irvin can take care of so that you can share your slides, just like in the other lectures. Is it set?
Oh, yeah, that's working now perfectly.
All right, you're good to go. Take it away.
Okay, so hello, welcome. I'm so honored to be here today and present to you what was my undergraduate thesis at Manchester University in 2019. I also just want to note that I'm quite critical of the EBU in my presentation, but I come as a fan and I love Eurovision so much. So my thesis looked at Daring to Dream, which was the motto of the Israeli Eurovision 2019. So it was an analysis of Eurovision 2019 as Israel's fantasy frame. My aims of my dissertation was to make sense of the fantasy of Israel that was presented through Eurovision 2019. And I argued that it relied on the erasure of the occupation of Palestine to hold ground. To analyze Israeli Eurovision as a site of homo-nationalism or pinkwashing, which I'll try and explain briefly later, and to question the European Broadcasting Union's neutrality as a regulator of the political realm, because to me, to regulate the political realm is quite a political act in itself. My methodology is a Palestinian curiosity. So I reworked Cynthia Enlow's feminist curiosity. She's a military historian, and when she was looking at male-dominated spaces, her starting point for research was always asking, where are the women? So I'm always asking, where is Palestine, to re-put it into the picture. I also want to note that talking about Israel-Palestine is one of the most complicated political dimensions in the world. So there's a limited, I don't know everything, and I'm always learning about the subject too. So my starting point for research was when Netta Barzilai won in 2018, and she said, "Thank you for choosing different. I love my country, next time in Jerusalem." So just 2 weeks before, the Trump administration had decided to move their American embassy to Jerusalem, which is a highly contested geopolitical landscape. So this idea that Eurovision was going to be held in Jerusalem next year was a very politically charged context for a new Eurovision to be held. Additionally, the Great March of the Return protests had already started happening along the Gaza border in Palestine, and there was ongoing and escalating violence. So here's just a quick timeline of events. Netta wins Eurovision on the 12th of May, and then Netanyahu celebrates her win as another thing to celebrate in Israel. The next day, Israeli forces killed 60 Palestinians and wounded over 2,000, and the opening of the embassy in Israel was just 2 days after Netta's win. The Great March of the Return protests led to 271 deaths and 29,000 injuries. So this was a very politically charged moment with which Israel had a site of state identity branding and a kind of a literal and figurative access to Europe. And while we recognize that it's not just governments that are running Eurovision, the Israeli government definitely coded onto this, what was happening. So how was it that the Great March of the Return protest was going to be the backdrop for this, the Eurovision that we love, and a Eurovision that prides itself on unity, diversity, and inclusivity, and claims it's a non-political entity? So this is the tension that I was trying to tease out. Also, what is pinkwashing? This is using the inclusivity of LGBTQ subjects as a marker of legitimacy that distracts from other negative actions by an organization, country, or government. So this is often how countries use their liberalism on LGBTQ rights to obscure maybe other things that they're doing. And this has been something that Israel has been discussed as before, and so has Eurovision. So firstly, the analysis of the fantasy. So Daring to Dream being the motto of Israeli Eurovision 2019, I wanted to look at what the fantasy was and ask, where is Palestine within this? So firstly, looking at Netta, she's an empowerment figure in the Me Too movement, a global celebrity, a supporter of human rights, and she claims she doesn't talk politics, only music and love. This is one of her tweets, just as an example of that. But when we ask where is Palestine, we create quite a different picture. On Gaza, she claimed there was no way to control it and she can't be pissed off or distracted about things out of her hands. But when she references her 6 years in the IDF, which has passed what was required, she refers to it as the greatest school ever. So it creates a problematic part of the fact that she's quite actively in a role of Israeli state formations. She's also implicit in her support for the Israeli government, inviting Netanyahu to do her chicken dance, and has performed at Israeli state events. So it's no surprise when Netanyahu says Netta has done exceptional foreign relations work, whether this is intentional or not. And this is a picture. And her non-political stance, I argue, neutralizes her participation in Israeli state practice, and she is neutralizing the power dynamics that are underpinning the idea that she's presenting herself as apolitical. This is political in itself. Another thing of analysis is a speech by Mayor Ron Huldai of Tel Aviv during the allocation draw and has insignia, and this is a member of the government. So he says, from its beginning, Tel Aviv belongs to a city of dreamers that never give up. 110 years ago, the dreamers built a city of modernism in the middle of sand dunes, and today it's one of the most energetic cities. The dreamers of Tel Aviv built a city of technology in a place that has no resources, and Tel Aviv is the startup city of the startup nation. We have the highest concentration of startup companies in the world. The dreamers of Tel Aviv have built a city based on the values of tolerance, freedom and human rights, which accepts everyone and is open to the world. So when we analyze this, what is Tel Aviv? It's modernism, energetic, technology, a startup city, has dreamers, tolerance, freedom of human rights, and accepts everyone and is open to the world. But this is set against sand dunes and no resources, a lack and an empty space. The pre-existence of Arab communities are neutralized along with a violent history of Israeli state building, and this is happening through the Eurovision stage. So this narrative only makes sense when you ignore the existence of Palestinian occupation. And by participating in the discourse of human rights for all, absent of Palestine, from an active representative of the Israeli state, Palestinian subjects arguably come outside of the notion of human and human rights. So another thing is what is political. So Eurovision claims that it's a non-political event. So I'm looking at what is political in this. So Jerusalem, it was trying to attempt to host in Jerusalem. This was a political act. The EBU eventually chose not to do this, but they said that it was because Tel Aviv had overall the best setup. And another part of what was political and what wasn't is just the idea of inclusivity, diversity, and unity. And when we're talking about Palestine, the Palestinian occupation is a site of disunity, not diverse, and a site of exclusivity for them. So the Eurovision final in May 2019, when we're asking where is Palestine, Hatari is a very interesting example of this. They showed the Palestinian flag on the night and they were fined 5,000 euros for going against political rules of Eurovision. This shot, this is on the right-hand side, has now been taken out of the official Eurovision YouTube clip. So arguably getting to regulate the political sphere is a political act. And when we define what's political and what's not, that essentially serves an audience of Eurovision that doesn't maybe want to shake things up. So in my conclusion, Israeli Eurovision relied on the fantasy of an Israel decoupled from its occupation of Palestine to hold ground. It was potentially a site of pinkwashing by the Israeli state that relied on the exclusion of others. And the regulation of the non-political by the EBU was potentially a political act in itself, allowing the inclusion of some and relying on the exclusion of others. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Isis. And while you turn off your share screen, I have one question for the time remaining, and then we'll have a bigger discussion with the entire group, right? One of the things that got me thinking about your research is actually the Netherlands. I'm from the Netherlands, and I looked at my own country and how it presented itself. And maybe even the very first clip of the final, we show this very diverse society, right? There is a lesbian couple kissing each other. It's very, very colorful, people from different backgrounds. Showing a lot of diversity, but it also made me think, is this really true about the Netherlands, or are we trying to present ourselves in different ways? So my question to you is, if your case about Israel can be extended, let's say, to other countries, and maybe even beyond Eurovision, because a lot of what you're saying also reminds me of the Olympics, where we're all going to cities and countries And we're wondering the way they present themselves is actually really what we're looking at. So that would be my question to you to elaborate on a little bit, extending it beyond and towards other countries and even events, right? Yeah,
definitely. I think any kind of global event like Eurovision is a very specific site of state branding for countries, because even though it's about music and that's outside of these actors, it's a very important stage. Where else do you get to kind of do this? And I think there's been criticisms of Russia and Azerbaijan before in the way they presented themselves to a European audience. And like we say, Eurovision offers us literal and figurative access to kind of performing Europeanization as well. So like this idea that there's like a fitting of a fantasy within that, I think kind of works with every country, because there's kind of no objective way of presenting yourself as a country too. And we can use this method to question, every kind of event that happens like that.
Exactly. So there's more research to come in that sense.
Definitely.
All right, thank you very much. And let's move on with the next presenter, Stefan. Where are you?
I'm here. Hello, I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Does my time start? Because I have a presentation and it's way too long. So I think I will just skip the whole script and just talk, because
go ahead.
In context of what I heard, I have to say not only pink washing, but rainbow washing. I mean, it's more like the queer parts are very iconic in context of Eurovision Song Contest, and I hope there will be research about it. And what I heard, I have to start with one quote that I actually prepared for the end of my little talk. I have to read it because I can't do it by heart. So, quote, by Hannah Arendt, who was born in Hannover-Linden, where I'm from. By the way, I'm Stefan. I'm working at the building that you see in the back. I'm head of cultural department at Volkshochschule Hannover, so an adult educational center. So the quote of Hannah Arendt is the following. If you want to prevent people from acting in freedom, you have to prevent them from thinking, wanting, producing, because obviously all these activities imply action and thus freedom in everybody's mind, including the political mind. So the Eurovision Song Contest claims, as we heard quite often today, that it is apolitical, and it's the rules also state that it has to be apolitical, but it is not, as we heard like multiple times today. So this is a great way to enter with adult education, because adult education orientates on the needs of the people. So we have to orientate with what we offer, with what the people want. Like everybody, yeah, including Irving, who's also from Hanover. So you have many aspects, and that is what my master thesis with the title, I have to read it in English because it's a bit long. The Eurovision Song Contest and its relevance in the context of adult education is also about, yeah. So I structured it like talking about the history of adult education, and also there are some spots that needs to be researched, like social nationalism that has to be researched, for example. And yeah, so the potential that Eurovision Song Contest has with all these viewers, and it's like a quote in Germany of 33% at the finale night, and that means 10% of the people of Germany are watching Eurovision Song Contest total. So you can enter with lots of possible adult educational stuff. You can do language courses regarding the country that the next Eurovision Song Contest will take place in. You could do political events or offers about what specifics are in this country. You can talk about history. You can talk about borders. You can enable people to vote, because you can make location votes on the spot. So you have many possibilities, and that is what I want people to empower about. So to summarize everything in like one short sentence, and that was like very confused right now, I think, because I skipped like everything, is look for an adult educational center close by, find a program planner that is Eurovision fan, and create an offer. am.
All right. That's a very interesting statement. Thank you very much. And actually, I've got questions about that. Let's have a conversation
Yes, please.
for the time remaining. Some of the stuff I recognize in what you're saying is something I've tried myself, let's say, including some elements of Eurovision in your lectures and linking that to what you're teaching people, right? I think that's very interesting. So maybe Eurovision as a topic and to introduce people to other, let's say, more theoretical frameworks or interesting academic topics and investigations, right? But what I was wondering about as an educational psychologist is why can this be successful? And one of my conclusions is, but I'd like to pose that to you, is that it is because you present people something that is very accessible and familiar to them. So usually in university, we also start with the very difficult topics right away, something that is not familiar to the students. But if you tell people to think about voting or block voting, and then you tell them, just think about Eurovision and think about network theory and how we can explain how countries are connected to each other, for example. That way you introduce them very easily with something familiar to something more complex, right? But is that, according to you, also what is underneath all this? Using
Yes.
Eurovision as an accessible topic to more complicated matters. Yeah.
It is, because it's very low level. And the part I completely skipped is to quote Madonna, music makes people come together, yeah. Because you, as we also heard in the keynote, people kind of have a feeling towards Eurovision. They cannot just be neutral to it. Either they like it or hate it, but they all watch it. So, or they have heard about it, or they have a cliche about it. You know, so you can use it in really lots of different settings with lots of different people to approach really different levels, also of political base work, like, you know, like how voting works. You can just say, okay, we have 20 songs now. For which song would you vote? Then people are voting. Then you have the election, and you see it's this song, and then you can talk about it, because it's like, okay, how did you vote, and why did you vote like this? Is it something like, is it the music? Is it more something political, like I dislike this country or like this country a lot, or I don't like the politics that just happened right now in this country? Like we heard about the 2014 booing about Russian entry. Yeah, so it can open lots of different levels, and due to the music factor, you have a very emotional and also non-linguistic level, because we had the first preview at Volkshochschule in Hanover, and the audience was so incredibly diverse. We had people in what I could see, you know, it was diverse because I didn't ask, for example, for religion or whatever. Yeah, but there were people in wheelchair. There were two guys kissing. There were older people. There were very young people. So it was so diverse, and we discussed it a lot. And yeah, it was really very, very interesting to see and also to experience.
But it's not so much about teaching people about Eurovision, right? You're really arguing for using Eurovision as a means to an end. It's a tool to open up other discussions. That's what you're hinting at.
It is both. Okay. Because we had Irving also live, and we had also Aida Holje, who was also online. I saw her on YouTube already. Presenting the history of Eurovision Song Contest, because it also gives an understanding about how people might vote now, or how songs are in the context of the history, yeah, or how political Eurovision actually is. If you look at the previous talks, you see that there are political topics like always within the Eurovision Song Contest, although it's claimed to be apolitical. I think my time is over and the dog is barking.
Yes, thank you for that answer, and we'll move on to the general discussion. And I see people entering the room. Here we go.
Hello, dear friends. Just a short reminder that you can vote for another 10 minutes. The voting lines are open, so use the possibility to vote for our 4 science slammers. Here you see the link on www.tweetback.de/54mf for male and female, because we have 2 female and 2 male science slammers. So give your votes. You have 2 votes each, and you can help our wonderful researchers to win one of these wonderful books, which is Die ganze Welt des Song Contests, a book full of interesting information about the contest with lots of beautiful pictures, lots of statistics. So even if you don't read German, you will have fun with this book. So help the researchers to get this wonderful prize and vote on tweetback.de/54mf. And now, back to the discussion.
Thank you, Irving. So yes, I would invite our science slammers, the chairs, and also our keynote, Michael, to turn their cameras on, and we can continue our discussion. Thank you so much. It was super interesting to hear all the work that you have been doing on the Eurovision and the different aspects you are covering. So I understand, obviously, time is short and it's always stressful. We have to do these things like if we were in the Eurovision, so sticking to time. But of course, we are also, in the sort of academic setting, and we like discussing things. So perhaps you can ask questions to each other. Michael, please feel free also to ask any questions you might have, and you can take it away, or I can ask a question, but I would prefer you to, take the opportunity to ask questions to each other. Who would like to start? Jose? No? I have a question then. So my question is about your immediate plans to continue learning, teaching, researching about the Eurovision Song Contest.
Yes, I'm graduating in a little less than a month, and I am going to, I think, study journalism further. I'm very interested in taking that route, also because I'm very interested in writing and traveling around the world. I also want to go to Eurovision next year, now that it wasn't possible for me to go this year due to the very limited capacity. But I want to travel to Italy next year and get to experience it myself, talk with people, and I already have things that I want to, my topic is so big, so there's things that I would really want to research further, and hopefully I would get to do that by going on to
Is there a particular aspect, Isabella, that you are already anticipating that you would like to research further?
Well, I'd really like to, actually, this is a bit off, but I really want to research into Turkey's role in Eurovision and the creation of Turkvision, and especially their relationship with the Big Five, as Turkey is one of the largest countries in Europe, if we count them in. That's one topic that I've really wanted to research, and also just really want to talk with people, because my work is, of course, my work is also very Western based, yeah, with my knowledge. Yeah. So talking with fans from Eastern Europe, for example, hearing what they think about their participants and the politics that they're presenting.
Thank you, Isabella. How about you, Jose?
Yes, I am now about to participate in a book with Tim Buletic and many other researchers. Also, Sofia is with us today. And yeah, I am starting right now a postdoc contract, who is that it will be very focused on the Eurovision Song Contest, because my PhD is not about that topic. So I am very excited of this opportunity too.
Congratulations, Jose. That's great news. Isis, are you going to continue your path researching Eurovision?
Well, I'm studying a master's in sociology next year, and I realized through my Eurovision research that I was really interested in sociology without kind of doing it before. Hatari, the Icelandic band I talked about in my presentation, have a film that's coming out, a documentary about their experience on Eurovision called A Song Called Hate. So I'm very excited as a starting point potentially to look into that, and also through my master's do more research into state identity formations through cultural events.
I don't know, Carla seems to be frozen at our Zoom, but following the same logics, Stefan, you said that you have a question and at the same time explain your plans for the future and ask your question.
My plan is to offer more courses in education connected to the Eurovision Song Contest, and also to empower my colleagues to also feel the spirit and see the advantages that we could make Eurovision week maybe, or month, or year, or decade. So my question is, that also came up earlier, is the Eurovision Song Contest really a song contest? Is it about the song, or is it more about concept of a country that you have? I don't have the answer. I'm just asking.
Some say it's religion, right? I'd say some say it's religion, actually. I think if you compare that to some iconic figures that we see in religion, and compare that to the history of Eurovision, as Michael Skay also said, like we did this year, we keep seeing these people coming back, the winners from the past. It's almost, actually, I'm quoting a fan who once said, "For me, it is religion. It's not an event. It's not a contest. It's religion." We could argue about that, right?
Well, I put a question here, which I think is associated with what Stefan just asked. And in fact, my idea is that since I watched the Eurovision Song Contest from very early age, the transformations have been enormous. And from a strictly song contest to where we are at this point, the travel has been immense. So I also asked that question, what's the value of music these days, because you said something very important, Stefan. You said, due to the music level, it also becomes an emotional level and a non-linguistic level. When you were mentioning in your presentation, and I think music has this trigger of emotions. So where has music actually gone, or what's the value of music in the present days Eurovision Song Contest model? I'm just launching the question, because many of us will probably have different possibilities of answers. I don't know. What do you think? Our science slammers first, please.
Sorry, and we also have a question from Michael. I think Michael questions it's better to end and to wrap up the idea. And Dean also have a question, I don't know, related to this topic of value of music, but maybe science slammers can.
Nobody has any idea.
Well, I think it's hard to put a monolith on Eurovision and music, because it's such a personal thing for everyone.
Of course.
Yes. Eurovision is a beautiful space where Europe comes together, and it's a queer friendly space, and it has this beautiful moment. But To me, probably the songs are the thing that sticks in my mind, but it's actually about this event and this one night where you come and sit with your family and you celebrate Europe as it's presented there. But that might be seen as different for different people.
I think actually that at least my perception of it is that this year we've taken a shift towards putting even more focus on the music with like for many years we've had like songs which been primarily in English language, and it's been written by Swedish songwriters, and it's been very international, where I think we've seen a trend where it's more about the music and it's more about the nationality of the music. So you just countries sing in their own language, like for example Denmark sang in Danish for the first time in I don't know how many years, and the song are composed by the artists themselves in many examples too. So I think we've seen a shift, and I think it's also because of the coronavirus, where we look more again towards the music and towards our culture that we want to represent.
I agree. I think there's a different trend now, I think. Like coming back to the early stages a little bit. I mean, obviously not like, but where music had a more central role, I would say.
Yeah, like France is a perfect example of this, like going back to the roots.
Yeah.
This year, I would agree, if I may, because France is really a very good example, and I had goosebumps, like bumps all over my body, because I was so flashed. I didn't see it in the semifinals, and then this live performance was really like, I texted in a friend group chat like, that might be the winner. Or also Switzerland.
Yes, I agree.
The dance was not so well, but if you compare it to Russia like several years ago, or Sweden, Mons, it was so technological. It was so, the video, it was so in the foreground. It was not so much about the music. And then you have, like you said, Isabella, composers performing their own songs, like the German entry. It was funny. It was a different approach.
So, Dean, do you want to put?
Yes, I would like to ask a question regarding Israel. I think a lost opportunity for Israel was only that it didn't include some sort of Palestinian act in Eurovision 2019, inevitable act, the act, and let's say monopolistic, and that been a great opportunity for Israeli and Palestinian musicians to perform together, and that would send a much stronger message than having Madonna. But my question for you is, can there be two truths, or rather, why can't these two truths coexist? Namely, that Israel is the most progressive society in the Middle East when it comes to the recognition of the rights of minorities, and the most open society, but it is also a state that commits human rights abuses against Palestinians. I think no one would disagree with either of these. So why can't we, and in this case, then the concept of pinkwashing wouldn't apply, because if we recognize that these two truths, then what's the intention?
I think that's a really interesting question, and it's a question I grapple with too. I think though it's not about Israel not being the most gay-friendly place in the Middle East. It's about how that's been appropriated by government forces to enshrine their own power in that region, and it's about this idea of how that thing is appropriated beyond it. And it's also about the inclusivity of queer Palestinians within that discussion, and the assumption that there aren't queer people in the Arab world. I think that's interesting too. And so I think, yes, these things can potentially coexist, but I don't think they did that on the Eurovision stage in 2019, because there was a complete obscuring of the idea that Palestine kind of even existed, and the idea that what was going on even existed, and the fact that if you're living in Gaza and you're queer, you wouldn't have been able to access Eurovision. And so I think this kind of makes it a problem to the question of the most gay-friendly place in the Middle East because it's at a certain cost to certain perspectives and certain political dynamics that it's appropriated to be there. But it's complicated and I don't have all the answers either.
No, but this is why I asked you, because it is complicated, but I think that you understand very well all of the different layers. So thank you for your response.
Oh, I think we saw so many aspects of Eurovision, and okay, I can also be here for 2 hours debating this value of music, because for us ethnomusicologists, music is not just a sound; it's all environment around it. But yeah. But I want to bring the Michael's question here, because we prepared this conference for this year under the topic of challenges, and Michael asked to our speakers, what you think it is the biggest challenge facing Eurovision and the EBU in this so huge context and with so many layers and so many ways of viewing the same event. For me, it's the most interesting way. It's you have different point of views about the same topic. What you think for our speakers of today? What is it the biggest challenge facing Eurovision? You can start.
I would say potentially having a space to unite Europe in a Europe that is quite disconnected and fragmented at the moment, especially coming from the UK. Obviously a challenge for it.
Yeah, I was also thinking like the fragmented Europe, and we've seen, like now I talked about, we had songs in the past about European unity, and these days we have songs about European division, like with your example, Isis Hattari and Harshit Mansigara, which is like completely the opposite of what Toto Cutugno stood for. So definitely like the division of Europe.
Yeah, for me too. Yeah, I think it's important to celebrate diversity as that slogan from 2017.
Maybe it's to stick by the roots, I don't know, to kind of be apolitical, saying that as a very political person, to kind of find the balance between allowing diversity without blaming countries that are not so far, like if we look at Eastern Europe right now, Poland, for example, with the LGBTIQ rights, because that divides even more, I think. So it's like kind of tolerating also and accepting each other.
Okay, so now we have heard again our 4 science slammers, and the result is about to come. Just a few seconds left. So I will start now the countdown for the vote. So if you still have to vote for one of the panelists, go quickly to tweetback.de/54mf and give your votes. You have 30 seconds left. 30 seconds, and you see the countdown here at the corner. And then in 20 seconds, we will know who has won our Science Slam. Oh, this is exciting, but voting is also an important part of Eurovision and also of Eurovisions. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the result is we will see the results. So the winner of today's Eurovision session of today's Science Slam is Jose.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Congrats to all of you and to Jose as well. Great.
I'm so happy.
Congratulations. So you win this wonderful book. I hope you will enjoy it, and maybe this is also a reason to learn another language. German is not the easiest one, but maybe this is a good reason.
I know that's the best reason. Thank you very much to all of you. I'm so happy.
Congratulations, Jose.
Thank you.
So, before we go on with our Eurovisions quiz and then wrap up our conference, we have another short musical interlude, and Ko-Jun has had a kind of rock spirit in this song contest, so he tried to make a mash-up of the Italian and the Finnish entry, and the result is what we are going to hear now. Enjoy. This was Korjun's special mashup of the Finnish and the Italian Eurovision entries of this year. And everybody who is still online, and there are still lots of you, now the big moment has come, the Eurovisions quiz. And as you hear, it's not a Eurovision quiz, it's a Eurovisions quiz. So we are not asking questions like who was the runner-up in the 2021 Eurovision Song Contest. Bonjour la France. It is more about scholarly research, because we want to make you curious about what we all are doing in the scholarly world, the research we are doing. This is why you can win this wonderful book, Empire of Song, published by Daphne Tragaki, a wonderful book and one of the first ones gathering Eurovision research from all over the world. So, are you ready for the quiz? So, let's start. So, you can go now to www.menti.com. There you can log in with the code 57263700. 57263700. I'm waiting for you to play with us, to do this special quiz. The first people are already arriving. A strawberry, a little train, the number 8. Maybe this is a special running order number in Eurovision statistics. The number 8 is not so bad. A snowflake. So join the quiz, and it's not so difficult as you might think. Footpaths are arriving, a zebra, a cancer. I'm a cancer, by the way, from my zodiac sign. A robot, a fish. So join our quiz on www.menti.com with the code 57263700. A football has joined us, so who says that Eurovision and football don't go together? So, yeah, trombone and a lolly. Yeah, we have quite a big number of participants. This is going to be exciting. Okay, 70 participants, 18, 19. Will we be 20? Yeah, we're 20. The little fox has arrived. So, we're going to start with our quiz now. Answer fast to get more points. So, the first approach to the contest through the lens of ethnomusicology was published in 2002. Who is the author? Anthony Seeger, Salva Castelo Branco, or Philip B. Bowman? Time's up. Who's right? Yes, 7 right answers. It's Philip B. Bowman, world famous ethnomusicologist. So, who got this right? Eurovision, Floriana, Isabel. Florian was the fastest, so he got 943 points. And the next question. Answer fast to get more points. Han et al. In 2004 argued that expert juries vote more accurate than public juries, are influenced by the running order, or vote differently whether they get something to drink or not. Time's up. So, 10 right answers. Yes, Han found out that expert juries are influenced by the running order. This is a very, very, very interesting finding. Who was right? So he's in the lead, but this can change quickly with the next question. Let's see what we are asking. The ESC embodies the concept of media event because it has an integrative function, it has a pre-planned nature and involves non-media organizations, or it is broadcast through TV. And we heard this today in Michael Ski's keynote. This was tricky. No, it is a media event because it has a pre-planned nature and involves non-media organizations as Diane and Katz defined in their research. So, who had this right? Ida, Golden Retriever, Isabel, Stefan, Kidong, and the Israeli football. I'm so sorry that I cannot read Hebrew. Isabel was fastest, 2,310 points. So you can take over. Ida is already on the lead. So let's see for the next question. One tension, according to Skis, between local media clues and organizers. What is this tension about? About the selection of TV hosts? About the selection of the host city? Or of global appeal versus European relevance? Time's up. Yeah! We have a very, very clever audience and attentive. It's about global appeal versus European relevance. And we have 13 right answers to that. Who gave the quickest answer? I think this was Stefan. Am I right? No, it was Emanuele. Congratulations. So you still can, with quick answers, go in the lead. That is now taken by two women, Ida and Isabel. So we see that in the scholarly community we have more women power than expected. So let's go ahead with the next question. According to my PhD thesis, how many dimensions does the Eurovision Song Contest have? 5, 7, or 9? Yeah, at least 11 people have read my PhD thesis. In my Kampfkultur, I defined 7 dimensions of the Eurovision Song Contest. Who has the right answer and who was the fastest? And I see it's Ida again. Congratulations. Let's go further with question number 6. In his book, Post Europe and the ESC, what time periods are covered by the relating? 39, 89, 19, 20, 45, 89, 19, 19, 45, 89, 19, 16. Tricky. Yeah, and again, 14 readers of his wonderful book that everybody should have read, everybody who is interested in the Eurovision Song Contest. So, who is in the lead now? Still Ida, but Florian had the answer. So, and where did the first international conference on the Eurovision Song Contest take place? Was it 2008 in Volos, 2003 in Geneva, or 2007 in Athens? it was supposed to take place in Athens, but in the end it was replaced to Volos, a wonderful, wonderful small city in the Greek mountains, would I say? At least it took very, very much time to get there by train, but it was a very, very great experience in Volos 2008. So let's see who has got the right answer. DJ Omeister is with us. Hello, great to have you with us. So, and he answered the fastest way, so this is how you get more points. Ida still in the lead, closely followed by Isabel and our Israeli football. Question number 8. Stefan Kapp's research is a plea for educating uninformed academics about the ESC, the ESC as a vehicle and topic in adult education, or raising awareness for education by means of the ESC. Yeah! Everybody was very attentive during his presentation, so congratulations! He was the fastest. Question number 9. How many scholarly articles have been published on the Eurovision Song Contest yet? 347, 1,642, or we don't have a clue. Yeah, and the answer is we don't have a clue because there are so many Eurovision researchers that we don't know. This is my plea to you. So if you're doing Eurovision research or if you know someone who is doing Eurovision research, please contact us that we can include you in our next Eurovision session and that we can gather all relevant articles in whatever language so to make a very comprehensive Eurovision research group. So Ida was the fastest again, but DJ Omeister is third now. Maybe he will take the lead. Who knows, maybe after the next question. Question number 10. Winners of the Eurovision Science Slam in 2018 were and 19 were both women, both men, or a woman and a man. They were both women. I have a blackout. I'm so sorry. Stage design, help me. Sophia. Merve, yeah, thank you. Merve Karpov. Exactly. I'm so sorry. Sometimes I'm a little bit confused when I have to deal with so much stuff, but Merve, hello. We met each other in Rotterdam and we had a good time together. So, 2 women. So in Eurovision research, we have obviously lots of women power. Kojun was the fastest. Let's see what is going on after question number 11. So-called block voting at the EC has been researched by means of network theory, blockchain theory, or gerrymandering principles. And I think that Fred mentioned something about that during our conference. 2, 1. Time's up. Yeah, it was network theory. And we have many right answers. Emanuele is the fastest one. DJ Omeister on third place. It's still everything open. The faster you answer, the more points you get. Next question. In which month of the year did we hold our first Eurovision conference? In February, in May, or in June? Ha! We got you. No, the first Eurovisions conference was definitely in February because there were two parts. One for the Portuguese audience and one for the international audience, parallel to the Eurovision Song Contest. So this was a tricky question. Who knew the answer? Sofs and MacD. So this is MacD was even quicker. ESC participant wrote her diploma about the different national ESC finals she participated in. Was it Barbara Pravi, was it Angela Peristeri, or was it Samantha Tina? Yeah, you knew that. It was Samantha Tina. And we wish her good luck for her further career. It didn't work out in this year's second semi-final, but I hope that we will have her in one of the upcoming editions of Eurovisions, at least maybe presenting her subject that she wrote her diploma on. Still leading is Ida, but Michael and DJ Omeister are catching up. Florian was the fastest. DJ Omeister now on second place. Next, please. Which organization funded the project Eurovision Song Contest and the New Europe? Was it the European Union? Was it the European Broadcasting Union? Or was it UK Research and Innovation? As if the European Broadcasting Union would fund research. Not at this point, at least. No, it was definitely UK Research and Innovation, and due to this we have this wonderful book from Karen Fricke and Jakubovic that wrapped up this research project. So, who has got the right answers? DJ Omeister, Songs Eurovision, Stefan. DJ Omeister is really on behind Ida. Let's see if there can be some changes in the leading. Because there will be no public votes ended up at the end. Eurovision was fastest. Next question. And we still have 6. In their article, The Persistent Structure of Hegemony in the Eurovision Song Contest, Gad and Maman claimed that the Western Bloc dominates Eurovision, that the Mediterranean Bloc only votes for its own members, or that the Northern Bloc and the Western Bloc don't like each other. Yeah, it was definitely that the Western Bloc dominates Eurovision, and look at the year. It was published in 1996, and in that period we did not have any Eastern European countries, and the Southern European countries were not so successful in the Eurovision Song Contest. So the Western Bloc dominated closest to that. Eurovision was the fastest, and now on fifth rank. Ida is followed still by DJ Meister, and we have football and on fourth place Emanuele. Next question. The first PhD thesis on a national final of the ESC was written in France by Francis Meul, in Sweden by Alf Björnberg, or in Greece by Fotini Nouri. Of course, it was in Sweden by Alf Björnberg, one of the most interesting books I have ever read. He was the first one to deal with the Melody Festival in a scholarly way. It's a very, very, very fascinating thing, and he inspired me with my thesis writing about the whole thing of the International Eurovision Song Contest. So, the fastest answer comes from Florian. Florian, maybe, I don't know. I read Amat as Ama, but maybe I'm wrong. Too many languages. But this is what Eurovision is about, as many languages and as many cultures as possible, also in our Eurovisions Research Conference. Le Guern found out that the French Eurovision audience is mostly gay, are mostly elderly people 50 years and above, or mostly belongs to social groups with higher cultural standards. Yeah, of course. The other answers were were too easy, let's say. Le Guern really made an interesting research about that among Eurovision fans in France, and he found out that they belong to social groups with higher cultural standards. So, that. Ida still in the lead, and I think this is going to be a kind of fairy tale win. Ida is doing the Alexander Rybak, but we still have 3 questions. The Norwegian music industry was highly impacted by body shock, secret gardening, or musical fairy tale. It was, in fact, the Bobby shock when they won the Eurovision Song Contest for the first time, and they had never thought that they could ever win this contest after coming in last for so many times. And this really boosted the Norwegian music scene. And the year after, we saw international successes like Aha coming from Norway. So this Bobby shock had a huge impact on the Norwegian music industry. We knew that. Eurovision knew that, Maggie knew that, Isabel, and our Israeli football, who is now on second place for the Euromeister. Maggie was fastest. Next question. Only 2 left. Catherine Baker is one of the leading Eurovision scholars for the Nordic countries, Yugoslavia and the Balkans, UK and Ireland. Not in, for. She is investigating so much in Yugoslavia and the Balkans and the importance of Eurovision in this region. big hello to Catherine, and we hope to have you in our next conference. Emanuele, 907 points. Ida also knew this. And so we are wrapping up this quiz with our last question. Question 20. Will you attend tomorrow's Eurovisions Conference? Yes, of course, or no doubt. And all the three answers are right, because we are expecting you tomorrow at our Eurovisions Conference Part 2 at 2:30 Central European Summer Time. And the winner of our quiz is Ida! Congratulations! You won this wonderful book from Daphne Dragaki. Just write to Eurovisions and give us your contact details, and we will send you the book as soon as possible. So, that was our Eurovision quiz, and now I give back to my colleagues. Here they come.
It was really fun, really, really fun. Okay, so now it's time to wrap up. We would obviously want to thank all our science slammers. It's never too much to mention their names. Yeah, of course, but I have to read them because there are too many of them. Okay, Isis, Stefan from Science Slam 2, and also Isabella and our great winner, Jose. Thank you very much for your fantastic presentations. We want to thank our very good chairs, Wilfried van Dellen and also Dean Voletic, their presence and their questions. We want to thank our audience for being present. And of course, we want to thank Orjun for his wonderful performances, which were very much flattered in YouTube, and they were really fantastic. Last year they were fantastic. This year they were fantastic as well. And we would like to invite you to be with us tomorrow again. I think my colleague Irving has already mentioned the time, but I'm going to say the time again. It's 1:30 UK and Portugal time, and 2:30 the rest of Europe. Now, I would like to point out that tomorrow we will have a very interesting session about artificial intelligence. And we have some very special keynote speakers, Karen van Dijk and John Ashley Burgoyne. I hope I'm pronouncing the names correctly, who are from the Artificial Intelligence Song Contest. They will be speaking about the future of music. Then we will have 4 very special invitees. So we will have Jon Olasand. I think it's a very well-known name amongst the Eurovision Song Contest. So it's almost somebody who does not need a very special presentation, but he will be here with us. Then we will have Dave Goodman. We will have Caesar Sampson. He was the singer of the 2018 Austrian song. And Ivor Little, who's a commentator manager for Germany this year. And we will have our Portuguese singer Pedro Tatanka from the Black Mamba here with us too. So as you will probably realize, we will have a big number of very interesting invitees and speakers tomorrow. So please don't miss our Eurovisions International Conference tomorrow, okay? And now I pass on to my colleagues, which will probably want to say something, maybe a farewell and see you tomorrow or something like that. So please.
See you all tomorrow. Sorry for the tech problems.
See you tomorrow all, and thank you for being with us. And thank you our speakers to be with us.
Thanks everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you for everything. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.